Hey, what's up? I'm Mike Squires. This is Couch's Podcast, episode number 136. My guest, Joe Balaguer of Balaguer Guitars. How do you come up with that? Um, you know what? If I started a guitar company, I'm like the one person that couldn't use their own name. I'd probably get sued, and it's too close to, what. So good for him for having a name that can't get sued for. I forgot to ask him if he got served a lawsuit by you know whom. Seems like everyone did. Probably he didn't. Uh, I had a great time talking with Joe. Joe's got one of my favorite guitar builder websites. If you haven't been to his website, go. Um, there, there's just like the most tempting thing ever. It didn't even occur to me that it appeals to me in the same way that the Nike ID thing appeals to me. And I've made a number of those custom Nikes and custom Chucks, and just bought them impulsively. Um, you can build a custom guitar on his website the same way, and it's great. I have to tell you, it's it's one of my favorite things to do. Like if I'm like, I can't sleep. Oh shit. I'm gonna go build a guitar on old Joe's website. And it's really gratifying and fun that I can go to sleep feeling like I did something, even though I do a lot of shit all day long. I love talking to Joe. It was a great time. He's a really focused guy, really got his shit together, and and a very thoughtful speaker. A lot of Joe, like a lot of guests I've never talked to before we are looking at each other on a screen. I don't know what his voice is going to sound like. I don't know anything. I don't know if I just don't know. Anything could happen. What a nice cool dude, you know. This guy, he hung up and he ordered a t-shirt off my website. What? Thank you, Joe. Thank you. That's, you know what? That's the kind of nice guy Joe is. Thank you, Joe. I hope you enjoy this podcast episode as much as I did. It was a really fun conversation for me. If you are enjoying the Couches podcast, please do um, go check out our Patreon. I know everyone's got one. I know everyone feels tapped. Um, you know, I'm working extra hard to transition this into something better that I can focus all my time on and make it a real bona fide thing that's happening, that I can sustain myself with and that I can make better because I have more energy. Like as it is, I'm looking at the clock on my computer right now and it's 10:30 and I'm posting this thing by midnight because I got shit to do. I'm pulled in many directions. So, you know, if you can, that's awesome. If you can't, God bless you. You know, I'm glad that you're listening and you're enjoying. If you are enjoying, if you hate it and you're listening, I have to ask you, what the fuck are you doing with your life? Go find something that you enjoy and do that. But you can support for as little as $5 over there. It's the only place you can get the songs that we create on the Couch Riffs episodes. You can download all of them there. There's a bunch of the cool Couch Riffs merch that's not for sale on the website there, and that's available only at certain tiers. And it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. There's also advertising opportunities over there for folks who are interested. So thank you for folks who have been doing that. Patreon.com/couches. Also, thank you very much to my friends at River City Guitars. Now, you've heard me talk about River City Guitars a lot. River City Guitars is a wonderful little guitar store in Spokane, Washington. Okay. These guys are longtime friends. My guy Bobby over there, I met him through selling guitars back when I worked for PRS, and he was at another place. And we built a friendship just doing business. And that's an interesting way to start a friendship, and I feel like it's a lasting one because you have to really trust someone in business. Um, and that's if that's how you start, then you're like, oh, this guy is totally cool. So if you want to go over there, make an offer on something on the website, they're very reasonable folks, and Bobby loves people. If you have something cool, vintage, used, unique, interesting, just plain cool guitar, bass, amp, effects, anything, hit Bobby up. Their number is 509-818-7693. Every day is a buying day. RiverCityGuitars.com. Send them an email, sales.rivercityguitars@gmail, and follow them on social media at River City Guitars. You're going to see a lot of stuff pop up there that usually doesn't even make it to the website because people snatch it up. So go check those guys out. I love them. They're also going to carry the Marvin CN90 guitar, which I had a hand in co-designing. I'm very excited. That hangs here behind me. It's a lovely, beautiful guitar. So thank you so much to them. Don't forget the golden rule: treat people the way you want to be treated, and don't be an asshole. Yes, can you hear me? No dice?
Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah.
How you doing?
This. Oh fuck! Every time it's like why is it stacked up? Do you know how to do this, man? This is like consummate semi-professional Mike Squires. I feel like I'm capturing this, and it's but it's stacked. Do I just shoot? There we go. Mm-hmm. And now I got a side by side. How you doing, man? Did I
Good.
lose?
How are you?
Oh yeah, I'm good. This is a welcome to the podcast, where every time audio happens, it's a miracle, and that there is video is, you know, is a Christmas miracle.
Thanks for having me.
Are you guys buried in snow still?
Yeah. I'm not sure the exact actual inch count that we got, but it was definitely over a foot for sure. We're about 45 minutes west of Philadelphia. So not too far from you because you're in New York, right?
Yeah, we're up near like between Hudson and Albany,
Okay.
and we got
Yeah,
dumped on similarly.
I'm sure.
Yeah, dude.
And the plow guy who usually does our neighborhood, I don't know if it was a new person or what, but completely just did a really poor job and kind of made everyone's shoveling experience way worse. So that was interesting.
Sometimes
Going on
plow guy can do that just because, I mean, it's great that the road's clear, but it goes from being, my yard has 14 inches of snow, and then my driveway has 3 feet of snow.
whatever was in the street is now in your driveway. Yeah.
That's right. But we live out in the woods, or not in the woods, but in the country and farmland. So, we're like one of 3 people in my whole town that doesn't have the attachment on the front of a pickup truck that is just waiting for the day that the snow falls.
Right.
Like, people just kind of have equipment out here.
Sure. Yeah, we're in the suburbs, and I remember the last house we lived in. My next door neighbor would attach a plow to his lawnmower, his riding lawnmower, and he would just go up and down his driveway.
That's a good
there
move.
with a shovel. Yeah.
I mean, it makes me look silly when I'm out there with a shovel. I got 50 yards of driveway to go at.
Yep.
It's a wonder I'm still a fat ass. No.
I was feeling it about 15, 20 minutes in. I was like, oh boy, this pandemic definitely got the better of me.
I've heard people call it the COVID-19 pounds, which is pretty good.
For sure. Yeah.
Have you been able to get to your shop this week since the snow?
Yeah, I actually went on Thursday just to check in. My guys haven't been at the shop since Tuesday because they're both commuting from Philadelphia and New Jersey. So they're not very local to the shop. So I knew it was going to be too bad for them to even venture out.
Right.
But I did check in on Thursday just to make sure the shipments that we had, just with part suppliers and stuff, were actually in the space and not sitting out on the loading dock or anything. Um, and then came right home because luckily I only live like 10 minutes from our shop. But the roads are just so bad because, like I said, I'm in the suburbs and there's a lot of back roads that aren't plowed. Um, and the black ice is really bad right now. So, I'm trying to do some stuff from home until next week, and just bang out a bunch of stuff from like Monday to Wednesday, and then obviously the holidays are here. So
When I looked up where you were located, I thought it was interesting that you were, and this is a thing that's unique to the East Coast, and I'm a West Coast guy, but you're close to New York, you're close
mhm.
to Philly, and you're close to Baltimore and DC, which is that's all great for, bands touring, just for being near music communities. Um, is that how you wound up there? Or are you from there?
I'm from here, so I grew up about 15 minutes from here in Norristown, Pennsylvania. Um, the area that I'm in, like the suburbs of Philadelphia, are just all very small little towns, like 10, 15 minutes from each other. Probably very similar to like upstate New York. But yeah, I lived out in California when I went to Luthery school in 2009. And I lived out in Sherman Oaks for about 5 years. Did repair out there and session work and was trying to do the band thing. Um, and then when I wanted to start my company, just purely because of the cost of living and rent and everything like that, I came back to Pennsylvania where I'm from.
Right.
That's kind of how that happened.
Is was the I looked at I snooped at your LinkedIn today before we got on the phone. Ah, my internet connection is unstable. Fuck you, you're unstable, computer. This is gonna give us a dipsy doodle. Hold on, just hang in there and be patient with me for a second. I'll probably end up saying that a lot. Or you'll just
That's okay.
that's what your internal voice is gonna say a lot.
I got a little bit of what you said there.
So
You were
you
going in and out.
I snooped on you on your LinkedIn, right? And
Mhm.
you went did you go to the Guitar Institute for
Yep.
Luthery school? Has it always because are there two? I thought it was in Nashville. Did it move?
So Nashville is actually the new facility. In addition, it's the second location where like Brian Nutter and like a few other guys are at.
Right.
Um, but the LA school, which it was originally on Santa Monica Boulevard, not down towards Santa Monica, but in like West Hollywood area. Um, that's where I went in 2009, and that was a new facility then. I believe it's still there, but that was the only Luthery school that the Musicians Institute had at the time.
Right.
Um, so when I was there, there was like Ron Thorne, did like inlaying seminars. Who else was there? Josh Contreras from GNL, Lance Alonso, John Carruthers, like a few other guys. And yeah, that's I mean, obviously you probably know, but that school does like performance and recording engineering,
Right.
everything really. And when I was looking into Luthery schools back in 2009, I was looking at Roberto Venn in Arizona, a few others like on the East Coast and the Midwest. But as soon as I saw there was one in California, I was like, oh yeah, I'm an East Coast boy. I need to get out of here and experience West Coast life for a little bit. And it was awesome.
Not that
So,
awesome. You came back.
well, yeah, I went there in my early 20s, and I'm 34 now. So I definitely it was an experience, and I'm glad I did it because culturally it's very different, as I'm sure you know,
Yeah.
from the East Coast. So it was just cool to be out there and learn that. And then unfortunately, when I graduated, it was the height of the recession, so my options were making $10 an hour, setting up 60 guitars a day at Schecter, or doing private repair. So I just did private repair and did that, worked day jobs in IT, and just hustled for years and years until I finally had the ability to start my own company.
Right. Did you always have that vision to start your own company?
Yes and no. Like it was kind of not delusions of grandeur, but like it was a pipe dream for me when I was out of Luthery school, because I knew I had a long road ahead of me until I felt confident in my skills to take on something like that. Because just being privy to like the online guitar forums and seeing everyone, starting their own companies or trying to start their own companies, people taking on too many orders and not fulfilling them, and a lot of like the different sides of the industry, the small niche part of like custom guitars, really made me focus on making sure that I could do fretwork well, wiring, all the stuff that really mattered, the meticulous parts of putting together a guitar after it's milled. I focused on that for years and years until I finally launched the company in like late 2014. So from 2009 to then, I was strictly doing repair work. And
There's
just like
nothing worse
focus.
than getting a guitar and plugging it in and the the pickup selector doesn't work. And you're like, what the fuck?
Right.
I just bought this thing, right?
Yeah. And that's, the reason why I got into Luthery is growing up in my teens, I played in a lot of bands, and I was just, because of money, I just worked on my own guitars, not well, but just based off of forums that I read and, stuff like that, figuring out what to do, what not to do. And I just realized I really enjoyed it. So I pursued it after I had a few years of like normal traditional university under my belt. And I was like, this really isn't for me. And yeah, that's kind of how that all happened. But yeah, I definitely focused on repair and design work first. And then when I launched my company, I definitely felt like I had, more experience under my belt per se to tackle something like that.
Right. And so when you launched, you were back in Pennsylvania at that point.
I was in the process of moving back to Pennsylvania. The first guitar I built, first two I built, were actually in California, in Sherman Oaks. And one of my first customers, I actually met through Craigslist, this guy, Bo Burchell from this band, Seosin. And I was selling an amp, or he was selling an amp, and I was selling a guitar or something. We were trying to do a trade through Craigslist back then. And I recognized his name. I was like, not to be weird, but do you play in Seosin? Like, I followed your band for a while, and I know you have a studio here in LA. And he's like, oh yeah. So I went down, hung out with him, and let me play all this sick like vintage Les Paul customs, and it was a really cool experience. And I was just like, by the way, I build guitars. Well, I aspire to build guitars. Would you be into speccing something out with me, and I can build you one by hand? And I feel really fortunate that was like my first experience building a guitar for someone, because he's very specific to what he wants. And at that time, the Evertune bridge was really new, and he wanted that in that guitar. So that was something I had to wrap my head around. And he liked it. And now he's still an artist today with us. And we have a signature model with him and all that stuff. But that was the first official, I guess, quote unquote, even before I filed for an LLC and all that stuff, Balaguer guitar. And then shortly after meeting him and becoming friends, my wife and I moved back to Pennsylvania so I could really take a crack at it.
Did it just make better sense to be in Pennsylvania for just overhead costs, cost of living, taxes?
Yeah, all of the above. But it was also like, at that point I was in California for a handful of years, and I just wanted to be closer to family. my wife and I were getting more serious. Well, at the time she was, my girlfriend, but my now wife and I were looking to settle down, buy a house, start a family, that whole thing.
Yeah.
And it just didn't make sense where we're out in California. Um, and one thing led to another, and we started looking at places in Pennsylvania and just made the move because she's also from Pennsylvania.
Oh,
So
she is.
she's,
Did she go out there
yeah.
with you when you went to school?
No, funny enough.
You guys just fucking met in California?
No, we didn't know each other. We knew of each other because we went to the same middle school, high school, and college, but we never like hung out or met or anything. It was very strange. We just connected when I was home. It was like one of the Christmases I came home, and we ended up knowing mutual people and started talking that way. And then I went back out to California because I was still living out there. And she came and visited me, and I talked her into moving out there. And one thing
Yeah.
led to another, and she was out there with me for 3 or 4 years, something like that. And then we moved back to Pennsylvania after that. But yeah, that's how that happened.
I love that.
Yeah.
So when you get back to Pennsylvania, what year is that?
Oh man, 2012, something like that. 2013. I can't remember. We were out there for a few years together, but I was out there already from 2009 to whenever.
Yeah.
Because when I was out there, I was working as like my day jobs. Like I said, I was working in IT. I was working at Hulu streaming service in Santa Monica by day, and doing guitar stuff by night, and just kind of trying to hustle that way and repairing guitars, playing in bands at night, that kind of thing.
Were you playing in metal bands?
No, so I did play in metal and hardcore bands on the East Coast, but when I was on the West Coast, I actually played in a folk band, and I was playing bass, which was really weird. It was a buddy of mine who he ended up getting this gig in this band playing drums, and they're having a really hard time finding a bassist that could also write music on guitar. And he hit me up about it, and I was like, oh yeah, sure, like I'll help you guys out. I'll jam a few times. And I ended up being in the band for months and months after that. But we ended up splitting up because half the band were actors, and they were like focusing mainly on that, and having to fly all over the world doing that stuff.
Did any of them do anything? Or any of them in movies that we would know?
Yeah. So the band was called Animals of Kin, and the main singer was Sarah Romer, who's married to Chad Michael Murray. She was in like Disturbia with Shia LaBeouf, and
Oof, that guy's fucking getting canceled.
yeah, he is.
That guy's in hot water, buddy.
Yeah. So, and then the other singer, Ryan Donahue, was in the OC, and he also was in. God, if he ever listens to this, he's gonna hate me because I'm not remembering any of this stuff. I think he was in one of the Cabin in the Woods movies, and then Tim Joe, who was the other guitar player, was in Neighbors. It was like an alien, like NBC family type of show.
Rad.
And he was also in This Is Us recently.
Oh wow, people love that. I never watched it. Did you watch it?
I watched a few seasons. My wife was really into that show, but I watched a few seasons.
Did you cry a lot at the end?
I don't know. Probably.
That's what people did, right? They cried a bunch at the end. It was real sad.
Yeah, I know that show kind of goes all over the place, and whenever I do get time to watch TV, I'm always just like throwing on The Office or some show I've already seen millions of times, like Parks and Rec or something. But just to zone out. But yeah, I tried to do the band thing a little bit with them, but it was just kind of everyone was busy, and I was the guy like over eager and like trying to do something with music, and it just never worked out. But
they're like, this is our hobby, buddy.
Yeah, and they were all super talented too, and they still are. It's just it just didn't work out because of scheduling and everything. But
do you miss band life? Do you wish you
100%. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Like I love Lutherie. I love running a guitar company. It's definitely scratches a huge itch for me. But my first passion and love is music, and it always has been. Um, and I still like when we moved into this house last year, like I built this whole room out to be like a little home studio, and um, I still try and carve away as much time as I can to write music and play and stuff. It's just tough,
Right.
uh, especially where I'm at in Pennsylvania. There's not a lot of people to jam with.
Right.
Yeah, so
Strangely, I feel the same way about where I'm at, although like Woodstock is an hour away and there are a lot of
oh,
musicians there in studios. There are a lot of people around. It's just I'm fucking almost 50. Like, what am I gonna do? Start a band and get in a van?
you've also been in a lot of great bands, and you're in a lot of great bands right now, aren't you? Just from kind of doing
I
a little bit of
mean,
my own research.
kind of. I mean, I'm in bands that haven't broken up. They just, there's a
Right.
there's a difference between being active and or inactive and broken up. Like, so, you
Sure.
know, yeah, I miss it also, for sure.
Yeah.
I'd love to, I'd love to find a way to, you know, incorporate more playing music for sure into what I'm doing. The
Sure.
videos are fun to do, but man, making those things, I got to tell you, like like making a guitar. It's like writing a song and making a guitar, two different things. They're two.
Oh,
They're,
sure.
how
Yeah.
many? So you have a couple of line. You have an import line,
Mhm.
and then you have a line that you're making in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
I'm assuming you have some CNC machines at your shop.
Yeah. So for the USA stuff, up until recently, the Heritage Series, we call it, was just one by one built by myself. Um, there were certain things that we would outsource to California, like if we had to do a specific type of nitrocellulose finish.
Right.
Um, but for the most part, very bespoke custom guitars, one by one. Um, but as of a few months ago, I started working with a larger CNC shop to scale up the USA series to do more of like limited runs and production guitars built in the States. And it's something I've been aspiring to do for a while. It's just I haven't been able to find not only the right CNC shop that could take like a smaller brand like us on and for it to make monetary sense to them, but we were selling direct for a long time. But last year we took on a bunch of dealers from the NAMM show, and that's been a huge push for us. Is a lot of our dealers in the UK really believe in the USA guitars because they've bought a few custom one-offs from us, and they've been pushing like, hey, if you can do 12 of these, we'll buy them. Um, so that's what we're working towards, is to get to a place where we can offer the same type of quality and options that we do with our one-off custom guitars, but maybe we do a run of 12 guitars, but they're in 3 different colors and all the same specs here,
Right.
here and there, but maybe some things change. But so yeah, that's definitely what we're pushing for in 2021. It's just the pandemic kind of slowed things down a little bit for that. And yeah, we do the import guitars, our select series, made in South Korea. And then those all come to Pennsylvania, and we QC, go through like a 46-point QC checklist on each guitar before we send them out. And if someone requests like a custom tuning or string gauge, we do all that in Pennsylvania as well. Give the guitar a full setup, and then it's out the door. And those are actually built at a really small shop, like a mom and pop style shop in South Korea. It's not built at World Musical where all the other guitars are built. And it's a great factory, but a lot of people just assume that our guitars are built there because they're built in South Korea. But
Right.
this guy, John, I met about 2.5, 3 years ago at a NAMM show at a supplier booth for like Wilkinson, Tone Pros, like all of those aftermarket hardware companies. Met
Was
him through
he just
there,
happened to be in the booth and you bumped into him, and started talking?
just started talking to him, and he was just like super friendly, and we exchanged info and just kind of went from there. And it was like a spur of the moment thing. I was already prototyping at the time with this other company that builds like Reverend and few other companies called Mir Music in South Korea.
Mhm.
It's like a medium-sized factory, not as big as World Musical, not as small as the shop that we use, but they're kind of like in the middle. Great factory, great quality. But I was finding that I was tied down to these really large quantities right from the get-go because they're used to kind of working with brands that are bigger than us, essentially. And I totally get that. But meeting John was like, whether you believe in fate or not, it was like we just crossed paths and it worked out, and we've been working with each other ever since. And I'm the only USA client that he works with. Other than that, he builds bases for where are they? Italy. There's an Italian base brand. I can't remember what they're called now. But other than that, we're his main client, which is great. And I'm able to source my own wood with him and do some things that we don't normally are able to do with like a larger factory, essentially.
That's incredible. So I want to turn the gears back a little bit. So
Sure.
you were already prototyping to try and figure out how to make some guitars that were more like price point accessible, I'm assuming, right? That's
Yeah.
pretty much always the name of the game. Although I got to say, in the 90s, I think if you heard someone say CNC and then they explained to you what it was and that they were building guitars that way, people would turn their noses up, right? They'd be like, "What?
Right. That's not
That
handmade. Yeah,
that's
yeah,
not
yeah.
guitar making." And the thing is, I think that's horse shit. And but those same people are the ones that are like, "What? $2,000? That's
Yeah.
ludicrous."
They
Uh,
want a $1,000 USA guitar.
yeah,
That's what it comes down to.
that's a tall order, man. That's a real tall order.
Yeah. Yep.
But I think that maybe you might be. Here's the thing. I've said this on the podcast a number of times, and you'd think by this point I would have gone and fact checked. But I believe. Why bother ourselves with facts anyway, right? I believe that Peavey was the first American guitar company to produce CNC to use CNC technology to produce guitars.
Honestly, I don't know the answer to that. I would assume it's probably one of three
in the
companies:
in the
Fender,
80s.
Gibson, or yeah, Fender, Gibson, or Peavey for sure.
I'll put
Especially with the
$5 on Peavey.
T60s and yeah.
Yeah.
But it's funny how that pendulum kind of swang the other way now with them, because I don't think they do any guitars really
I
anymore
think
in
they're
the
only
States.
doing like some like entry beginner kind of stuff,
Right, right.
guitars that have like fucking Spider-Man on them and stuff. And not in a
Right.
cool like Scott Ian kind of way.
Sure.
Um so you're already prototyping and you meet John and this
Mhm.
is like boom. So you already have this ambition to like fill out sort of your line, right? And have more offerings.
Mhm.
Do you from the outside, I got to say, you look like you have your shit together more than most small builders. Most small guitar companies, and I hope that's true. Um,
I'd like to think so. I mean, it definitely when I started venturing into that side of the industry of OEM manufacturing and working with uh, factories overseas and everything, it was very much a trial by fire, learn as you go um, type of experience. I didn't go into it thinking, oh yeah, like I'll learn how to work with a customs broker. I'll learn how to do all of these things that
right.
you need to figure out along the way. Um, but I think, yeah, I definitely was, at least I think I was one of the first smaller builders. Like I don't see Reverend and some of these other companies that have been doing Korean guitars for a while as smaller companies, because they've been around for a really long time and they do
Right.
great stuff. But like as a smaller niche builder, um, I didn't really see anyone else doing it in the price range with the type of guitars that we were trying to do and that we are still doing, where it was like teetering on the side of, vintage inspired guitars, but with like modern appointments and gearing it more towards the metal and hardcore crowd because that's what I know. And then just also, fusing these vintage elements to cater to the guys that want to do like the more indie, post rock, praise and worship type of stuff too. So I think it was definitely half luck and half just really being as ambitious and hardworking as I can to make sure like the guitars that we got from our music, from John, from these other companies that I was prototyping with were like the best quality and the most consistent I could get for a specific price point. And then just trying to like stay true to that throughout the entire process. Because that's the hardest part is there are a lot of like larger shops out there that are willing to kind of do whatever you want as a client, but the guitars don't always come out like very consistent.
Right.
So you have to be set up to like know that you're going to eat a specific amount of your cost and you're going to have to chuck some guitars. And it's just, I didn't want to go into it doing something like that. So it was definitely a learning experience for sure. But I hope I have a good hold on it now.
Do you and John use the same CNC machines in your respective shops?
No. So John's shop just actually got a brand new CNC machine about a week or two ago, because we're doing higher quantities that was done before. And they also just moved into a bigger shop too to accommodate more space for the bigger CNC as well as more wood stock as well. Because his wood stock, he'll buy, a certain amount of mahogany, maple, all the normal types of wood that you would see on a production guitar. But then I'll help drop ship like Pale Moon Ebony and Buckeye Burl and these weird exotic pieces that we'll add to our online builder for a limited amount of time with limited pieces and whatnot. And yeah, like as my company has grown, so has his shop. And it's been cool to kind of like scale together and get to the point where we're doing the kind of capacity and quantities that we're doing now. So it's like,
what a cool relationship to have made.
Yeah, and it's really not to divulge too much, but to be candid with you, like we both have invested in each other's businesses like along the way because it's been such a handshake, very like friend to friend type of relationship that I've had with him.
Have
that
you
I just
visit
feel
him
fortunate.
there?
No, so we see each other every year at NAMM. We go out to a Korean barbecue place. We talk and everything. And every time I've been wanting to go over to South Korea, something has come up, either with a huge family event, like we're getting married or we're having a kid, or the pandemic happens or whatever. Like there's always some kind of thing happening that I just haven't been able to get over there. But what's nice is the quality is controlled so well because it's just John, this guy Chris, who's the head luthier, Andy, who does a lot of the logistics and operations, and then the newest guy, Hunter, who does the CNC work. And these are all American names that John has given his staff. So they are Korean. They're just, for some reason he gives them American names. But yeah, so it's nice to have like a really close knit team that I've been working with for this whole time, and I see half of those guys every year at NAMM, and it's just been a really good relationship. So
let me ask you this:
cool.
when you're prototyping a new model, and you can tell me to fuck off if you want, but when you're prototyping a new model, I assume you program your CNC and you cut it in your shop and you're like, yeah, this works. Then you don't This is not like the old days. You don't have to send a guitar there. You can send the program in an email, yeah, or Dropbox, and then he's off to the races. Is that right?
Yeah, yes and no. So like for certain guitars, um, if it's like a set neck or a neck through, even some bolt-ons if they're like carved tops or something like that, there are certain jigs and certain templates that have to be made, regardless if I prototype something here versus over there.
Right.
Anytime we do a new model over there, they're still going to prototype it just because they have different processes than we do here. And sometimes things will need to change because when we're uploading a new model, uh, whether it's going to be a USA model and a Korean model, because we have an online builder that literally allows you to choose like various scale lengths, various pickup configurations, pick guard, no pick guard. Like there are so many combinations that the design work that we need to do and to be prepared uh, for just adding a new model is so involved that they always have to make sure that, okay, well, we've prototyped this body shape. Doesn't mean we need to complete a whole guitar, but we just need to make sure that this body shape to carve everything is completely the way it should be, as if we were to build it here in the States. Um, so, you know, technically, like we could do something here and send it over there. And that is how we do it. Like we will send them the DXF and the step files and all of the CAD drawings that they need. But since their machine runs on like a different tool pathing software than what we do here in the larger CNC shop, they're still going to have to draw the paths and the machining of the body shape or the neck or the headstock shape or whatever through their own software. So the drafting part of it is one side where I send them the design, but then the actual engineer for the CNC has to then take those files and convert them to the mill
Right.
and draw the paths and everything like that. So yeah, I mean, we've been working with them for so long now that it is a really easy, seamless process, but there is a lot involved behind the scenes that we have to make sure that we're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's with the various options that will crop up. Because if we upload a new model to the builder, we need to make sure, okay, if someone chooses a 7-string version of this or a multi-scale or something completely oddball, we need to make sure that our Korean shop is like prepared for whatever that is. And
So
yeah,
this is a great segue, because I've spent, and I know a lot of guitar builders, especially, I mean, now in December and January, I like to try to have builders of guitars, basses, amps, pedals on the podcast occasionally, but I try to like go heavy in December and January, and especially this year because no NAM, right?
sure, yeah.
And um your website is especially killer because you have that guitar builder on there. Now, if someone builds a guitar on there from, for anyone that's listening and they want to understand what the hell I'm talking about, there's basically you pick a model and then there's just every appointment. It's like you choose your wood, your body wood, your neck wood, your fingerboard wood. Do you choose your frets? I don't know.
You can choose your fret count,
Yeah.
and if you want it to be like a standard scale or multi-scale fan fret, but we use medium jumbo stainless steel fret wire just as our default
Good
fret
man.
wire.
Color, top, everything. It's really great. And uh it's a fun thing to indulge yourself in. Now you can see the back end of your website. I imagine you probably go to it. Do you think that having that builder has helped you with sales, like website sales?
Oh, 100%. We
Because I've
when we
built 6 guitars in the last fucking 3 days that I can't stop thinking about.
yeah, no, it definitely has, and I think when I was looking into getting that done, I have an IT background, but in order to build something like that, it was just so complex. I ended up finding a developer in Spain who has already built similar builders for other companies, even companies that don't do guitars, like just
Right.
other configurators or whatever. Um,
Cars or whatever.
yeah, exactly. So working with him, it was awesome because he uh, laid it out in a very simple way. I was able to work with a designer to kind of put like Photoshop layers on top of like my actual 2D drawings of the guitars. Um, so that was a whole process in itself to get that done. But then to get it uploaded to the website and have everything talk to each other from the e-commerce side to everything else, it's really involved. But I knew it was all going to be worth it because I know as a guitar player and as a consumer, when I go to a website, like whether it's an amplifier company or even like I can't even remember what it's called, but there's a pedal board company that allows you to like place pedals on the pedal board.
Oh, pedal board
And
builder. I've done that.
yeah,
I've messed with that so hours.
same. Yeah. So I just know like it just I don't know, it stirs something up in you where you're feeling creative and it helps the process of finding out like if you're specing a guitar on the website, you know, maybe you'll find a spec that you normally wouldn't think you would be into, but then you see it visually on the guitar and you're like, oh, actually, that's pretty sick. And we've had people email us saying, you know, I bought a guitar because of that builder and because I was able to envision like one of your guitars, but with a different headstock shape and woods and color and all this other, you know, stuff. Because for a while, as we were teasing the builder, people were just emailing in requests and we were manually doing them in Photoshop. It was taking forever.
And then you
And
send it back to them and say, this is what it looked like.
yeah, and they would email us back and say, can I see it with this
Right.
instead? And it eventually we stopped that, but it was like, we've probably done 100, 150 like custom mockups for people until we finally pushed the builder live. And a lot of those requests were like coming through our Facebook discussion group that we have, and people were just kind of like pinging us about different mockups and whatnot. But so yeah, I definitely think it has helped sales, and I think just being able to see a visual representation of any of our models and different, you know, woods and colors is
Yeah.
going to help someone get further to the point of like, should I buy this for myself? You know, do I feel more comfortable now with this company because they're giving me the ability to do something like this?
So let me ask you this. The last and arguably the coolest thing that I did on your website was I built, what is the name of the very sort of extreme star, like 80s throwback star shape?
yeah, the Tartarus.
I built a fuchsia, uh, which who knew I was going to be into fuchsia, but it really it worked. And
Yeah,
I tried just about every color on there. And I was just staring at this thing like mesmerized, like, look what I did. But really, you just click a couple of buttons. But it's very empowering as a guitar fan and a person who is always like custom, like, you know, people want custom
sure.
stuff, they want unique things, right? uh so let's say a person does what I did. They go to your website, they go to the builder, they build a guitar, they build some whatever, the sick ass guitar of their dreams. What happens after that? Because this guitar that I went through and spec'd like that, everything. Like I got to pick whether it had a reverse or non-reverse headstock. And it was like $1,700. How does that
Sure.
happen? That's it. That's pretty incredible.
Thanks, man. So when someone places an order, it goes directly to myself and Mike Ciotti, who is my operations manager. He lives about 20 minutes from me. Pennsylvania based as well. And he goes through all of the specs, make sure there's nothing awry. Like if someone picks white binding with white side dots, that's something we would obviously reach out to someone and say, hey, you sure you don't want black side dots?
Not going to show up.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that. So it goes through an order review process. And then once we have reviewed the order, each order number goes into an order status tracker, similar to like Domino's, where you place your order, you see a little bar. And we have like
I
5
was
or
on
6
mushrooms the
statuses.
first time I experienced the Domino's pizza tracker.
Oh yeah,
And it really messed with me. I was like, it basically told me he was at my door. Sorry.
that's funny. Yeah, so there's like 5 or 6 stages that the guitar goes through, and Mike manually moves each guitar through each stage. I mean, granted, he has like a sophisticated Excel document that he uses to do all of that, but so he moves every guitar through every stage, no matter what date that they were ordered, and he attaches your email address to the status tracker. So anytime we update, okay, the guitar is going from wood procurement to rough CNC milling and sanding, and then from that to finishing and wet sanding, and then from there to buffing, final assembly, QC, blah blah blah.
Or do people at that point hassle you for photos? Or do you let them know, hey, sorry?
Well, that is part of the process. So as we receive pictures from Korea, which they do their best to send as many as they can, as quickly as they can, and as often as they can. But they are a very small team, so usually we don't receive pictures until 2 or 3 months in, where the guitars will be off the CNC going into finishing, and then from there they'll get more consistent pictures towards the end of the building cycle.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you get these email notifications when your guitar goes through certain stages, and anyone can email us and we can give them whatever update they need. And as soon as we get pictures, we email them off to the customers. And and then once the guitar is completely finished, we take high quality studio pictures of the guitar at different angles, send them to the customer as well. And then they go through final QC before shipment to them.
That's great. Yeah. 2021 might be the year that I have a fuchsia star-shaped guitar.
I know a guy.
Because what the hell?
We should make it happen.
Maybe can do. I got to start making this thing make some dollars and cents a little bit. So how many guitars are you doing? And this is also, if this is information that you don't want to put out there, how many are you able to do with your team in the States? Like separate, just what did you, yeah.
So for the custom heritage guitars, because of the amount of guitars that we're doing overseas, and this has kind of been like, not a pain point for me, but it's been something that has prolonged our growth and scale for the USA guitars, to where it was about a year or two ago, I closed the order books and I told people, hey, our USA Customs, because that's what it was called, USA Customs series, is now transitioning to our Heritage series, where the guitars are just guitars I'm going to build, specs that I'm going to choose, or a dealer is going to choose. I'm going to build it and then I'm going to sell it. And that's kind of how I've been doing the USA guitars, because not only because of my time constraint and time management portion of that, because of all the import guitars that we're doing, but it allows me to be more creative and enjoy the process of building something that I've been wanting to build. And then once it's completed, just posting it for sale. And that's what I've been focusing on for the last year and a half, until recently, like I said, months ago, where I started talking to this bigger CNC shop on the West Coast, actually, to just mill bodies and necks for me, like rough mill bodies and necks. and then they'll send us the bodies and necks, and I can work through them with my apprentice and just go through each guitar, and then eventually release a USA line to where those guitars will be sub, $2,400, and they'll be built in Pennsylvania, and a
Right.
bunch of options that you won't be able to get in Korea, like nitrocellulose lacquer and aging and all that cool stuff. So,
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, man, that's the gist of it. Like we've done really well with the Korean guitars because they are such high quality and so affordable from a grand scheme perspective of guitars that are in the same wheelhouse. Because not just through the builder, but we also do production guitars in Korea in that same shop.
Right.
So we'll do runs of 20 or 30 guitars that are $9.99 that have roasted maple necks and fingerboards with stainless steel frets and aftermarket hardware and pickups, and those sell really well for us. So we're just trying to scale the USA stuff as we go. But in the meantime, I've just been building, like this guitar I'll show you.
Hey, while you're grabbing that, let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Were you forecasting that the import line was going to occupy many of your man hours leading up to that growth, or that's something that blindsided you? You're like, oh, right.
Well, I was hoping it would be successful, but I don't think it blindsided me because it didn't happen like overnight. Like we grew over time, but it was definitely something that I was so hyper focused on making sure the guitars we were doing in Korea were coming in consistent and weren't leaving the shop in Pennsylvania until they were exactly what they should be before they get to the customer. And honestly, like the guitars come most of the time like intonated, in tune, and it's like, what? And
Right.
we'll just give them 8 hours to 12 hours, so sometimes 24 hours, especially now when it's so cold and dry,
Right.
for the guitars to acclimate before we even open the boxes to QC them. And some take a little bit of TLC than others, but now because we've been doing them for so many years, it's now, and we have more people in the PA shop doing QC, that it's allowing me to have more time to like build stuff like this and to do
Let me see
other
that again.
other business.
Is
So
it is this a first eyeball? What are
no.
those? What are those? What are those pickups, and what is that bridge?
So these are bare knuckle Blackhawk humbuckers, and this is a hip shot Ibby bridge. It's called. It's actually a direct replacement for like the Ibanez Gibraltar hardtails.
Uh-huh.
So it's similar to a hip shot hardtail. It's just a bigger radius side, so it's more comfortable in my opinion.
Yeah.
But this is nitrocellulose lacquer. There's like a 3-tone sunburst, like Fender style, with a metallic Crown Royale purple top coat. And then you can't see it on the camera probably, but there's a lot of like checking and striations and whatnot.
I can't see that. Yeah. Is that a
But
clear cover on the back?
it is, yeah.
That's great.
But
And what do you mean to tell me you're making this? You made this one.
yeah, so
Yeah.
these are the guitars that are like the one-off heritage guitars. And this is my personal one, but like we just sent one over to the UK to our dealer called Guitar Guitar.
I've been to many a guitar.
Yeah, a few months ago. And that was like a T style, our Thicket model. And that's just something that I spec'd out with Rowan, my contact at Guitar Guitar. And every now and again, like we'll put out just custom builds that I either put together or a dealer specs out. But the end goal is to get to the point where we can do those runs, like I said, but also open the order books up to customers to spec out custom USA built guitars with me as well. And the Korean guitars definitely, have done so well that a lot of the USA stuff has taken a back seat because I was so hyper focused on making sure those guitars were um, everything they should be and are currently. So, but yeah.
I'm going to ask you two questions because if I only ask you one, I know I'm going to forget the second question and we're going to keep moving on because that's my style. So, uh, the first question is, do you think that it will ever make sense for you to have a shop in the UK where guitars are drop shipped directly from Korea to the UK and you have a team that you can work with there that you know and trust to set up your guitars the way they deserve to be set up before they go to your dealers there, so that, I mean, that's a pretty big bottom line, the shipping and the man hours and then the
Mhm.
shipping again, right?
Yeah, so Guitar, as you probably know, has like 6 or 7 locations, and they've been really good to us, and they're a huge part of why we've grown as quickly as we have in the last year or two. And um, we've already been talking to them about having like an exclusive distribution channel for Europe and the UK through them um, for our Korean guitars. Um, USA, we haven't really got to that point yet because they're still waiting on me scaling those to be more of a
Sure.
production guitar, which will happen. It's just that'll have to be another conversation at that point. But um, yeah, I mean, I think that's something that as they start ordering more guitars from us, they have the ability to do QC and setups there in their warehouse. Um, and they, from what I know, they do that with the guitars that come through anyway, even if they are set up and QC'd in Pennsylvania before they get there or what have you.
Sure.
But yeah, I think you know that could potentially be the next natural progression for if we end up doing a full distribution channel through them. I think being able to ensure that those guitars are meeting the same standards as they would here in Pennsylvania would be ideal.
What about domestically? Does it make sense to you to try to have USA dealers, or is it, I mean, it makes fine sense because let's face it, if you ship a guitar to someone who orders online in the UK or even Canada, it's a huge pain in the ass when they're like, "Eh, I'm going to return it. I've got some
Right,
buyer's remorse. Oh, my wife found it and she said I couldn't have it," which is a great excuse that people like to use.
for
Um,
sure.
you know, in the States, does it make sense for you to move in that directions? Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I think dealers in the states is important because especially in areas where we don't have a lot of not people on the ground, but like just California is such a huge state that we work with Pipple Audio in Southern California, like right outside Escondido near San Diego.
mhm.
And they are such a hub for that area of not only like very modern, expensive guitars like Mayonnaise and PRS and stuff like that, but they also deal with a lot of smaller companies. And I think because of that, and I'm not just saying for guitars, like amps, pedals, everything, uh, they draw in such a wide net and it's such a diverse crowd of customers that I want my guitars there because I want people to experience hours that maybe they never would have had the chance to because they don't really look into smaller brands because they always buy their PRS or they always buy their Fender or whatever.
Right.
And they can see the difference. And I think it's also like the more people that believe in the brand and believe in like why our guitars are different than those other brands, uh, just means the world to me too. Because when I hear from customers that they had a really good experience with like someone who works at Pitbull Audio and how that dude was talking to them about our guitars and why they're different and cool and unique, um, when there were like X amount of other guitars from other brands in the same price range that this guy was looking in, and this one sales rep veered him towards us because of X, Y, and Z. That kind of stuff is just like, that makes my day, because I think we can only do so much as a company through email or social media or phone. But
Right.
when someone's in the store and they're having like a visceral experience with a guitar, and like they're feeling mojo or whatever, maybe they connect with one, but they don't connect with another. I just want to be part of that experience. And that doesn't mean that I want to be in like 20 or 30 dealers across the states, but those
Sure.
small dealers that are like privately owned, and they're very, very much focused on like customer service and really hearing about what the customer wants, and not like upselling them, I think it's like such a huge thing.
Having people excited about your product that don't work for you is the greatest thing that you can have, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I mean,
And that's,
to
yeah,
have people, to have non-employees um evangelize your product is, that's it. Like that's what you want.
yeah. And I think that's a huge reason why working with dealers, in my opinion, um, is just such a cool thing, because when you find those dealers, whether they're small or big, like that have people running the show or people within the shop that are just good folk who are into what you're doing, you can rely on them um, to talk about the brand and be confident in like the specs and like what we're about and why we're different than X, Y, and Z. And
I
yeah,
would like to
it is
talk
cool.
I would like to ask you some questions about some of the more extreme ways that things that you've done are different. And fan frets are not like you know, I know some people that are still shocked when they see fan frets. I've never played a fan fret guitar. I to understand that it's ergonomically. Will you tell me what fan frets are and what they do, what they're good for? I know that's an incredibly
Sure.
naive question, but it's an
No,
honest one.
yeah, no, not a lot of people. I mean, it's still a fairly new concept from like a main production guitar
Right.
uh, point of view. Um, so there's a few advantages to doing a multi-scale guitar or fan fret, whatever you want to call it. The main thing is string tension, because if you're playing, and you mainly see multi-scale guitars um, being extended range guitars, so meaning 7 8 string guitars, 5 6 string basses, things like that, um, because of the fact that if you have lower strings or you're in a lower tuning, I'm sorry, thicker strings in a lower tuning on a 7 string, you want a longer scale length on those strings, and you want a shorter scale length on the higher strings, so you can retain that bendy tension without it feeling too stiff. And if you just want to play and drop A on a 7 string and have the other 6 strings be standard, you don't want to have a guitar that's 27.5 inches long on both ends.
Right.
Uh,
I've tried
you
to
would
play a
have
27.5 inch scale guitar like a guitar, and is a bear to wrestle.
yeah, you end up fighting with it, and you just don't have the same feel that you would get from a normal scale guitar. Um, so being able to fan the frets, and usually some builders do it differently, but if you place the neutral fret, meaning the straight fret, around 7 or 8, if you're doing a multi-scale that's like an inch and a half to like 2 inches at most of a fan, meaning if it's like a 27-inch scale on the lower register and a 25.5 inch or even a 25-inch on the higher, and you put that neutral fret on the 8th fret, it just naturally goes with the way your wrist moves.
Right.
So the ergonomic intent in that design is that you're already moving your wrist in that direction when you're going down to the lower frets and also when you're going up to the higher frets. So it isn't super weird to get used to as long as the fan doesn't exceed 2 to 2.5 inches.
Right.
Once it starts getting to 3 inches and above, it's like, okay, whoa, this is weird.
Here's some more
But
naive questions for you.
sure.
Everyone that I've seen playing multi-scale guitars, uh, so far, I think they're playing a very modern brand, variety of music. Usually, you know, really heavy music or progressive music. Are there any traditionalist players who have jumped into that you know of? Like, are there any blues guys that are playing multi scales?
Uh, Not blues that I could think of. There are a lot of jazz guitar players, like traditional jazz guitar players that have played multi-scale guitars for years and years, even before it was adopted to more progressive metal, style guitars, headless guitars, etc. Um, so like Charlie Hunter, I'm trying to think of a few others off the top of my head, but
Right.
he's a big one for that. So this all came about from there's this guy, I'm gonna forget his name now, Curtis Novak or something like that, where he came up with the fan fret system, um, per se, with electric guitars. And it really started out as like a jazz thing because guys were playing um, extended range guitars, 7 string, sometimes even beyond that.
Right.
And it was a scale length thing. It was for improved tension, easier, tonal properties for those higher and lower strings because you could have the advantage of having a longer scale length on the lower strings and having a higher one for the triple string. So don't quote me on the history of all of that, but I think there has been a long lineage of multi-scale instruments before it reached like the heavier styles of music.
And so just by nature of a lot of modern heavy music be having down tuned or, an extra like fuck A or whatever,
Sure.
it just makes sense to have a multi-scale guitar to some folks.
Yeah. Yeah,
Got
to some folks for sure. Like I think I mean we still do 27 or 26 and a half, 27 and 28 and a half baritones all the time that aren't multi-scale and guys are just getting them because they would just want to tune down and play doom or they just want to have like a baritone guitar and not have to worry about getting used to like a fan fret system. I think it's for a very specific need, and I would definitely recommend anyone who is looking into getting a custom guitar with a multi-scale neck to try and find some guitar that has that first. Because while I say it's, oh yeah, you can get used to it, it's because I've played a lot of them and in various scale lengths, various string counts, everything like that. So if you go to your local music store and you see one of the production multi-scales from Schecter or ESP or Ibanez or whoever is doing those nowadays, definitely try them out first because it is different.
So when you went back to your guitar rack, you pulled out that
Sorry.
a very traditional, shape-wise looking guitar, and you said, "This is my guitar," and so that led me to believe, like, oh, okay, Joe likes some tradition, but if I look at your website, there's also some wild ass shit on there,
Yeah.
and very very modern looking guitars, and these are things that see, this is crazy. Now here's something, and I think that and this is even more traditional. This is more recognizable as a traditional guitar shape than some of the other stuff that I saw,
Mm-hmm.
right? On your website. There's
Yeah,
one
I
that
mean,
doesn't have a top cut, maybe, or what? Like what am I thinking about?
yeah. So I don't have one of those here. That's my anomaly design. It's a headless. Um, it kind of reminds you of, I don't know if you remember, they were mainly jazz guitars, but Klein guitars, Klein. Um, I think he started making them again, but they were like really well known in the 90s and early 2000s. They're headless guitars, and the upper bout came up pretty long and wide, and it had a very wide back bout where your arm sits, and people would mainly play it in the classical position.
Right.
Um, so the guitar I'm holding now is my Vega model, which is a headless design, but it's like more of a double cut and it's like really light. Um, and this is a 7 string with my headless bridge and headpiece, but it's a bolt-on, and roasted maple neck, mahogany body. Um, so I definitely am a traditionalist at heart for sure, because I grew up playing like 80s Les Paul customs and tellies and stuff like that. Um,
I did notice
but as
where the headstock would be, you have a flange there. Is that just
Yeah,
for
there's a
familiarity's
little
sake?
there's a little volute,
Yeah.
just not only for like the construction purposes, just so you can put your thumb somewhere.
Yeah.
um, but but yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it's the kind of thing where over the years you mature as a player, but also for me as a luthier, um, my guitar designs sometimes mature or adapt and evolve or whatever to whatever vibe I'm feeling that year or years. Um, and this was just based off of really just wanting to do something where I felt like I didn't have to have any constraints or um, any kind of box that I normally put myself in as like, okay, I'm going to design a vintage inspired yet modern guitar version of an offset shape or a T style shape or whatever. Where this and my other headless design, I was really just trying to design something without any boundaries for myself,
Right.
creative boundaries rather. And that's kind of where my mind went. But
It's got to be really
um,
satisfying to your designer's mind, right? Because if you were to design an electric guitar today and you were like, all right, an electric guitar has some, it's got to have a neck because you've got to be able to change the scale of the string to change the notes, and you can have a bunch of different different configurations that way, but you had no preconceived notion of what the guitar body looked like. You just had a list of requirements of what it had to have and do, and oh, you want it to be comfortable, so it's, oh, I'm going to make a contour here so that my arm comes across.
sure.
uh were you always interested in building guitars like that, or was that something you were like, I'm gonna get in here and I'm gonna do this?
Uh, it was definitely a matured experience and a continual thing that I feel like I've matured through because uh, when I first started out, like the first guitar I built, which was for Bo, was just a straight up like T style guitar. It wasn't offset. It had 2 humbuckers and an Evertune bridge, and there wasn't much imaginative design going into it besides doing like a belly cut and a contoured heel instead of like a block heel with a plate.
Right.
And there were a few things that I started doing from the jump where I was wanting to modernize a Telly or modernize a Les Paul or whatever. And it took time for me to like find my design sense. And I still like find myself like doing things a little differently when I design a new model. Um, and that's what is so fun to me and exciting because I never feel like I'm just recreating a jazz master or recreating a
Right.
telly or whatever. It's always something, you know, it's something that you are familiar with, but it's something that's a little different that I twist in a different way. So it's always been my thing.
The headless guitar thing is pretty polarizing with guitar players, right?
It is. You either love it or you hate it, pretty much.
I feel like they came along at a time when I was impressionable and totally open to anything. Like if they would have come along in the 90s, I probably would have been like, get out of here with that. But they came along in the 80s, and Eddie Van Halen famously played a couple of Steinbergers.
You did.
And
Yep.
he, as far as I'm concerned, even though he does not, or he didn't play them for the last 30 years of his career, I was just like, he he made it totally cool for anyone. Like sure, jazz guys and experimental guy, like whatever.
Alan Holdsworth.
Alan
Yeah.
Holdsworth, yeah, and oh god, Reeves Gabrels, I think
Yep.
maybe played one, didn't he?
I think he may have.
And
Yeah, at some
in the
point.
80s. But yeah, I'm like, he made it, look cool. So as far as I'm concerned, Richards could play a headless guitar, and I wouldn't bat a freaking eye, you know,
Yeah.
I just wouldn't. But people get pretty bent out of shape about it. Did you, when you released your first headless guitar design, did you get any backlash?
Uh, Not backlash, but it was you could definitely tell the people that weren't about headless instruments were out and about. Um, but it was never like oh, I'm not following your brand anymore kind of thing, denouncing Balaguer guitars. But it was definitely like, well, that's interesting. That's ugly as F or
Right.
whatever. You know what I mean? That's fine. I know it's not everyone's boat, but then we saw a crowd of people interested in these guitars that never heard of us before. That it was cool to kind of like branch out and reach out to these people that were into fusion or into progressive metal or whatever.
Right.
And we sell a decent amount of our headless models, and obviously they're not our most popular, but they definitely are scratching someone's itch.
That's
But
great.
yeah.
Let me I don't have a ton of questions about headless guitars, but here's a question based on just the sort of like the design, of an electric guitar, and whether you're going to use a tilted headstock or a straight headstock, and string trees or whatever. Like inherently, a guitar fights with itself to stay in tune, right?
Mhm.
Does a headless guitar alleviate some of that issue?
It does if you are using a bridge and headpiece system that helps that instead of kind of goes against or doesn't improve it as much as it should, to the point where it's kind of why are you doing it? The whole headless design philosophy that I approach, and maybe some other companies do as well and some others don't, but I want it to be more lightweight, more ergonomic, and improve upon things that a normal conventional guitar wouldn't. And being able to design my own bridge and design my own headpiece and kind of look into the things that some people had gripes about with headless bridges and headless headpieces, because there are arguments to be had where if you have a headpiece at the end of the neck for a headless guitar and they are separate pieces instead of one whole hunk of brass or
Right.
aluminum or whatever you're using, people will argue that one is stronger than the other, one is more secure than the other, one transfers energy and vibrations better than another, etc. So I took all of that into account when designing headless models, but also like how does the body fit on your leg? How does it fit in every stance? You know what I mean? Um,
So each of those
so
bodies, you can comfortably play it in a classical like middle position or on your right leg.
right, and I think that's
Try and do that with a
a huge.
Firebird.
I think that's a huge part of like if I if you are going to venture into doing something that's so progressive and like almost on the verge of like avant-garde guitar design
Yeah.
from a traditional perspective, like you should try and think of things that will improve aspects of a traditional guitar design that you normally couldn't improve. Well, you could to an extent, but not to an extreme as you would with a headless guitar, because like our bridges are 40-to-1 tuning ratio per saddle. So like that's similar to the Steinberger, that's similar to Hipshot hardware, where your individual tuners on the end of your headstock are going to be at most 21-to-1 ratio.
Right.
And I think the Graph Tech ratio tuners are maybe a little higher than that, but it changes per string. But there are just things that you can't do on a guitar with a headstock that you can do with a headless guitar from a design standpoint as well as structural things. So
I love that. It's one of those things that
yeah.
I was surprised. I mean, I've already divulged that I have a soft spot for the Steinbergers, and especially the Steinbergers that have the body, the
Mm-hmm.
double cutaway thing.
Oh yeah, I love those. I used to have one.
You did.
Not a New York made one, but I had like the I don't know if it was Korean or Indonesian. It was the Spirit Steinbergers.
Yeah.
They're great guitars.
I really wanted a trans trim,
Mm-hmm.
because Eddie had one.
Yep.
That thing was all over 5150.
Mm-hmm.
It's like sick. Hot Summer Nights like showcases it, and I saw him do it live, and it blew my mind, and I was just like, I gotta have one. I never got one, but um
They're cool.
yeah, super cool. I have to tell you, when I first saw those guitars on your website, I was like, oh, what is this? And then I started looking at them. And I was like, no, these are actually pretty killer. Like, I'm into it. This is rad. And I think that I think more people need to, I don't know, more people need to do whatever the hell they want. But I think that if people let go of their preconceived ideas of what's good and what's not good,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know, we could all move on and make the
Sure.
world a brighter place for you and me.
Well put. Well put.
uh, uh, so, do you have anything that you are going to launch next month in lieu of NAM announcements, even though you have just done your fall stuff?
Yeah. So I don't know when you're going to post this episode. Um, maybe you can
You don't
divulge
have to
that.
give up the goods.
I'm just curious. Yeah, because
Oh, this will go up Monday. Yeah.
okay. Yeah, so around Christmas time, we are launching something completely new. Um, it's not a completely new model, but it's something completely new for us that we're excited about. So
Awesome.
definitely be on the lookout for that. But yeah, going into 2021, we are doing a virtual NAM experience at the shop. It's going to be pre-recorded because we have to worry about social distancing, and we wear masks and gloves in the shop and everything. So but we're going to pre-record some stuff, and it'll not only include like new products, new models, but it'll include artist performances and a lot of really cool interactive stuff. So
Oh, that's
I'm
awesome.
excited. I'm excited for that. Yeah.
That's rad. Well, I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Um, well, I really had a great time talking with you, and I think
Me too, man.
I'm
Me too.
You know what? I'm glad you're making guitars in the world.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Uh, I think, yeah, I came to learn about you, I believe, through Ryan Bruce.
Okay, yeah, I love Ryan, man. He's a good buddy of mine.
He's a good
He played
dude.
our guitars. He played our guitars for a while. He's
He's been very he's been very cool to me. He's been very, very helpful and, and kind when he doesn't need to be. He just has.
he's yeah, he's one of the best dudes I've known and still know, and he was a huge part of the Hyperion model. I mean,
Right.
that model is a model because of him. So I owe a lot to Ryan, not just as a friend, but as someone who worked with him in a business sense. So yeah, that's awesome that you heard of me through him, because he's such a good dude.
Well, listen, man, Merry Christmas to you and your family. And
You as well. Thank
you
you.
guys be careful. You don't want to
Yeah,
slip on the
yeah.
ice and break anything. It's
I
a game
slipped.
changer.
I slipped the other night when my wife was like, "Be careful going out there." I was like moving the trash can because
Don't tell me what to do.
the plowman didn't do a good job on the road, and I was like, I got to move the trash can to a different area on the road because it's gonna get covered. And she's like, "All right, be careful out there." And I stupidly said, "Oh, I was actually gonna try and slip. Thanks," like a jerk. And lo and behold, I went out there and karma collected, and I slipped. And I didn't fall, but I looked probably real dumb because I was flailing my arms around
You're doing the
trying
Chevy
to
Chase.
gain. Yeah. And I went back in and I told her that. She's like, "See, that's what you get." And I was like, "Yep, you're right. Gotta listen to your wife."
That's, if I had $1 for every time I've told myself that, I'd have bought I'd have bought that fuchsia guitar straight away without batting an eye.
Oh man.
Well, yeah,
Thanks for
thanks a
having
lot
me.
for giving me so much time, man. I really appreciate it. Will you do me a favor? Do you have any
Yeah.
pictures? Do you have any high res photographs of yourself with one of your guitars that I could use? I don't know if you've seen, I'm gonna butcher the crap out of it, but I'm gonna remove the background and, you know, make a poster, like a
Yeah.
Instagram post and a cover photo for YouTube. And
Yeah. Yeah. I can
you
send you
know,
a picture.
if you if you're interested, I mean, I don't know if it sounds like you don't have a ton of time, but if you ever want to be in a performance video,
100%. I'm
I
in.
make these quarantine videos and they're
Oh, I
fun.
know. I know. Yeah.
And there are a lot of people doing them, and mostly, and they're like the 2 minutes guys are doing great stuff, but it's different. It's like typically metal guys doing metal songs or punk songs, and I'm trying to pull together folks from all over, and then doing usually 80s centric stuff, and it's all live. So, you know, not live everyone together, but you get one pass, or it's a single pass performance.
Can I show you real quick how much I love the 80s?
I wish you
One second.
would.